Afeni Shakur.
Bumpy wants to talk with you.
Oh, I'm guessing I'm in trouble, huh?
You are trouble.
Depends on what the fuck you heard.
Folks saying you the shit. Man that wants to own the whole avenue.
Wants to own.
That's right.
All right, episode 3, Godfather of Harlem. So, in the beginning, we got Bumpy Johnson and Mamie. They were sitting, I guess not in a lecture, but they were just like sitting down watching like James Baldwin, talk about stuff. And then that's when, he was like, oh, look, drug lord. Because when Bumpy Johnson got up after like getting like a word out, like, hey, there's something, something wrong. I guess like, with the buildings and the property that Bumpy Johnson like basically bought. And also too, like, the whole drug stuff as well. But that's when James Baldwin was like, oh, we got like a drug lord here. And that's when Bumpy was just like, yo, like, you try to like put like two black people like against each other, and you're kind of like parading in front of white folks, right? And it's just like, that's what it is, like two monkeys basically like arguing with each other. And I'm like, you see, there's a lot of stuff that happens like in the show that kind of like happens in today's standards, where it's just like, the whole black on black crime, and then the whole like black people like tearing out another black person, where it's just like black people are supposed to really like uplift and bring each other up rather than kind of like tear each other down. Nothing wrong with criticism, but there's a difference between criticism and trying to tear a black person down and trying to uplift them instead of uplifting them and making them better and stronger, than rather than making them feel like shit. So I sort of like what they was going with this here, and we got that. And then that's when Bumpy Johnson found out, like, a bit later that Fred Stroud is the one that's been, orchestrating some things like with the property. And he had like this guy, Mr. G, who turns out Mr. G was actually, I guess, dating Bumpy Johnson's sister. And they was going to get married at one point, because Bumpy Johnson sees him later too. And he was just like, because he didn't know at first. And then that's when he was just, oh, you was the guy that had the property. But then that's when Bumpy Johnson finds out that Fred Stroud is kind of like, he's gonna play him. He's screwing him over, because he was gonna build, like, destroy like the Apollo Theater and make some other shit that he was gonna do. And that's when Bumpy Johnson was like, we ain't gonna have any of that. And then we found out that Fred Stroud was talking to Joe Colombo, because he was just like, yo, you got to take out Bumpy. And that's when he's like, I can't do that. And he was like, isn't what you mob guys do that? And he's just like, mob guys, like, what are you talking about? So that's when we seen that. And I like how in the beginning as well, where Stella, was talking to Delia about like the whole, how it's like, it's basically hard for her to like take over as a woman, because it's like she's living in a man's world. So it's hard for her to actually do anything when you have like, men who's in charge. And she doesn't really have what is it, a leg in a fight. I think that's how I'm probably butchering the shit out of that. Maybe a dog in a fight or a leg in a fight. I'm probably butchering the shit out of that. But she doesn't really have a leg to stand on. There we go. She doesn't have like a leg to stand on. So she's trying to like figure out like what's going on, and also who stole like the doogie. And everybody's saying that, hey, Bumpy did it, but it's like Bumpy didn't do it. It was like Frank that did it, because that's when Peru and Chance, they come up to Frank Lucas later on, and that's where they was just like, hey, we know that you did this shit and you need to give it back. So I like what they're doing with Frank a little bit, because they're trying to give Frank Lucas his own story, right? Even though in the real story, I don't think it went down like that. I don't think it did. But I like that they sort of brought it up a little bit, where when Bumpy and Frank was talking, he was just like, you didn't come here on your own. You was chased. So I'm thinking they're gonna probably tie into the story of what I said in my previous video, that Frank Lucas had a bounty on his head, because I think there was somebody in, I think where he was at, I think Ohio, that somebody was looking for him, or there was like a bounty. So I think that's gonna probably like play into the story, which I can't wait to see. Hopefully they do that, where it's like, yeah, there was a bounty on his head. And I think what actually happened was, because I think either Bumpy Johnson paid off the bounty, or he killed the guy that was trying to kill Frank. I think that's how it went, because he saved Frank, and then ultimately Frank decided to like choose Bumpy. But from what they're giving us right now, they're giving us like, okay, Frank is doing his own thing for now, but then he's gonna eventually go with Bumpy. Now I kind of wonder if Frank is probably gonna maybe kill Joe Colombo, or it's like what type of interaction is gonna happen between like Joe and Frank, because we seen like towards the ending where Frank goes over to Joe and he's just like, well, I was the guy that got like some kilos and we could do business together, and I'm sort of, you know, playing everybody and maybe we could work together. So that's when Joe's like, all right. So it seems like Joe and Frank is gonna work together. But then we do know that Joe and Stella, I wouldn't say that they had a thing, but it's just like they also work together too. So I wonder if he's gonna tell her too that basically his kid named Frank Lucas took the drugs rather than it being Bumpy, because again, Bumpy's an honorable man. He's not going back to the doogie business. He's trying to do things differently. But with all of the problems that's coming ahead, it seems like it's gonna make him come back to maybe like the doogie game or get back into that line of work, despite him trying to do things differently, which I like, which I completely like. And then we got some shit that happened with Margaret in the school where she was beaten with I guess like a ruler. Now here's the thing, because back in the days there was talk about that where teachers was actually beating kids, because I believe there was a time where teachers was allowed to like put their hands on kids, but then I know that they changed the laws on that, and then it went to, I think, Catholic schools, where I think it was either Catholic schools and private school, I believe, when they was allowed to like hit the kids with a ruler, right? So it's crazy that it happened in the past, because it's just like, oh, like she's being beaten, though her and the other kids is being beaten, and it's just like, oh, y'all gotta do something about this. As we seen Elise and Mamie go up to the school and talk about this, and they was just like, yo, like, Margaret's getting beat up. She's getting beat by a teacher. Like, this shit ain't right. But before that, we got an introduction to Tupac's mom. And I was like, when she said Shakur, I think Afeni Shakur, and I was just like, wait, what? Tupac's mom? What the fuck? Whoa. What? Like Tupac's mom? Oh, wow. Now, for anybody who's watching, I wouldn't say like don't get too hype about this, because it's like this story is still taking place like, what is it, 1967? So Tupac doesn't get born until like a few years later. I'm sorry, couple of years later down the line. Like, he's not gonna be born now. It's like too soon. So I think this is her, because I'm like, when the Shakur part, because that name is like so unique. You don't really hear anybody with that name, besides like maybe like a few people, but that's like a unique last name to hear. Not everybody has that last name. So I was like, okay, because she talks to Elise in the diner, and she was just like, Malcolm's fire didn't really die in you. It's more like he set a fire within you to like continue his work. And that's what it really is, because the Black Panthers is there to like, you know, protect, you know, make sure like, you know, black people, they try to like fight against like the whole oppression and like white supremacy and all that other stuff. And funny enough that I actually mentioned this, because there's actually some shit that I think that's happening in Ohio, I believe, where you got like some racist people going on over there in Ohio, and the crazy stuff that I'm hearing over there. And I'm like, ooh, some stuff that was on the news. I'm like, yeah, you know, and it's crazy, because the stuff that happened in the past is, some of it, not all of it, but some of it is still happening today. It may not be as big as it was in the past, but some of that stuff is still actually happening. So I'm like, damn. But you know, we got to see that, right? And then that's when at the end, when Bumpy and Mr. G was able to like settle their little grievances, because Mr. G was pissed, because he was just like, you killed your sister, you did this and that, I was gonna marry her, she became a drunk and this and that. But after when Bumpy showed him that Fred Stroud was playing him, right, and he wasn't gonna, because Fred Stroud was gonna build the builders, and then he was gonna get rid of Mr. G. He was gonna get rid of him. So when Bumpy showed him the truth at the end, he was just like, yo, this guy's playing you, he's gonna do this and that. That's when he said, all right, I'm gonna sell my estate and give everything back to Bumpy. So now Bumpy has things going for himself now because Fred Stroud and Joe Colombo, they was gonna do business together and have like some sort of infrastructure, but then that's when Bumpy Johnson, showed Mr. G at the end the truth about what was going to happen and what was going on. So now everything goes back to Bumpy because Bumpy is like, yo, I'm doing things legitimate, like I'm trying to do things right, and he's being fucked over. And another thing that I wanted to point out too was that there was a lot of stuff that happened in the past with like banking, because when black people wanted to like make businesses or create businesses, it was kind of hard for them to like create businesses where banks didn't want to give black people loans. They was like, I think, what was the word, red herring them, right? They was giving them like a bunch of like shit back in the days for wanting to do anything, and it was just like, we're not doing this for you, we're not doing that for you, right? So as another thing that they added into the story, which they didn't really add into the story, but this is something that actually happened in the past. So I was just like, damn. So it's a lot of stuff that I'm liking what they're doing with the show, because it's history lessons. It's about stuff that actually happened in the past, and it's just crazy. It's crazy, but I do like how they talked about like the Black Panthers and they show more of them, right? And then we see also too at the end, like Elise, she's donned like the whole, like the Black Panther, like the leather jacket, all black, and then the sunglasses. I was like, okay. So it seems like Elise is gonna join the Black Panthers and fight the good fight, right? So I'm like, ooh, that shit getting good, right? But like I said before, I like what they're doing with like Frank Lucas, because again, they trying to give him a little story of what he's doing, right? And then inevitably he's gonna work with Bumpy. That's gonna happen. I guess they're gonna have their little differences, but then eventually he's gonna work with Bumpy, because Bumpy is gonna most likely save him at the end, because I think there will be somebody that's gonna come to Harlem to look for Frank and be like, oh, I'm trying to kill this dude. But I think Bumpy is gonna see an opportunity. He's gonna save Frank, and that's when Frank is gonna appreciate that, because Frank was like, he wanted to be the boss. He doesn't want to have work for anybody else. He wants to be in charge of things. And then he peeped that when he said Bumpy was good. Bumpy only seen him as expendable. He was just like, nah. You tried to play me. So I was like, see. And I think when he said that, I think that's when Bumpy's gonna be like, yeah, this kid, I like this kid. Like, he's smart. He knew. He knew what I was gonna do, because he was just like, he was expendable. Any shit could have happened to him because Bumpy didn't care. But I think as time go on, Bumpy's gonna be like, yeah, he sees some shit in this skit, because again, Frank came to Harlem with a knife, like a switch knife, right? And we know Bumpy is known for using like a switch knife, right? That sharp shit that cut the shit out of you, right? And I think that's when Bumpy's gonna see more into this kid and be like, yo, I like this kid. At first, he's not gonna like him. He probably want to put a bullet in him, but I think as time go on, he's gonna like really grow to like Frank, and then eventually he's gonna add Frank into his ranks and be like, all right, I'm gonna add him to his ranks, because again, Frank Lucas technically is a successor to Bumpy Johnson. So I just like all that though. But overall, let me know what you guys think about episode 3 and the crazy stuff that actually happened in episode 3, right? But like, comment, subscribe, and share. And I'll catch you all later. Don't forget the Doogie. Hey, and the spray.